We're going to talk a little bit about why MFA is not enough. As actually Rizwan just made a good point that the traditional security methods and methodologies that have been deployed really aren't enough in today's new COVID inspired dynamics, where you have a remote workforce across the globe right now, and that doesn't look like it's going to be changing anytime soon. So identity comes into question now of as to whether the people who are sitting there working are the right people. And the issue that exists today with existing solutions around traditional MFA, well, it's widely deployed. I'd say that most financial services organizations have deployed some type of multi-factor authentication solution today, which is good. However, there's a piece of it that's broken in that identity is presumed in most of the cases where after that initial login takes place, you're not doing any more of a check to see, is that person the same person throughout their entire work session? So when you have MFA and you combine it with single sign-on, while single sign-on makes things convenient for end users, not having to continually log in to other applications and giving you kind of widespread access to all your corporate resources, from a security perspective, with having remote workers all over the globe, you have more of a much larger security risk associated with that all-day work session, since single sign-on sessions now could probably last, instead of a few hours as they have traditionally when people were working on site, now you probably extend that out to possibly the entire day or maybe multiple days. So you expose your firm to a lot more risk as you move from application to application throughout the day. So your identity is being presumed to be correct throughout that work session, but there's no way to check that with existing solutions today. So that security gap that exists because that work from home, a remote environment, not knowing who's amongst your workers' environment from a remote session, that creates a large risk that needs to be addressed today. So we're going to talk a little bit more about how that type of risk can be mediated. But presumed identity is obviously a bad security strategy. 81% of breaches are identity-based breaches, where the wrong person or a rogue user has access to the right credentials. As we know, there's a wide variety of methods that hackers use to trick people into giving up their credentials, or you find their credentials on the dark web for sale. So that's a huge problem. And it's a problem that we can actually address with some of our technology, in that even if you have the right credentials, if you don't have the ability to enter those credentials in a way that confirms your identity, then there's an issue there. So we'll talk a little bit more about how we address that problem. But you can prevent a good percentage of the breaches that exist today. You can prevent those breaches by having better identity security in place. So I'll talk a little bit more about confirming identity. So having the ability for a user to address presuming identity, a better technology is essentially needed. Something that's going to let you know the identity of that individual the entire work session, and not just at that initial login point. So the concept of all-day identity confirmation and eliminating the security gaps that exist under traditional methods is one that takes a different approach. It needs a new way, a new technology to address that security gap. So if you look at presumed identity and how it would work if you were able to actively confirm someone's identity throughout their entire work session, you would establish your identity initially like you do with traditional MFA. And then every few minutes you'd be checking, or every few seconds, in fact, you could be checking the identity that user is still that same user sitting at that desk doing the work that they're supposed to be doing on a continual basis, without having to interrupt that user's workflow, because no one wants to be interrupted every few minutes to be asked to authenticate and type in a password, or answer a mobile, enter an SMS code or a one-time password. Those things are very obtrusive. They're very they just interrupt your workflow. So you need a way to do that in a way that can confirm the user's identity continually, but that is not intrusive, and can invisibly do that in the background. So the question is, how do we get there? How do you do that with an all-day identity solution? So if you look at what Pluralock is doing, we're doing continuous authentication based on something we call behavioral biometrics. So I'll talk a little bit about behavioral biometrics. Basically, behavioral biometrics is the science of measuring how a user interacts with their workstation based on a couple of different technologies. So based on typing cadence and patterns that people have, they're very unique to individuals. The way I type on a keyboard on a consistent daily basis is very different from every other person who's out there who's typing on their keyboard. So you're able to build very unique, highly accurate profiles of a person's typing behavior without compromising privacy. So everyone's concerned about privacy. We're a privacy first organization. So it's not about capturing keystrokes. It's about capturing typing cadences, the patterns in which you type, the amount of time you depress keys and move from key to key are very unique to you as an individual. So we're able to capture those types of patterns, along with patterns around moving your mouse or your pointer. Again, very similar concept of being able to track and build highly accurate profiles around the concept of how they behave, how you act as an individual, what that behavior looks like. And we can compare those profiles to the telemetry that we gather as we look at your typing patterns and your mouse movement patterns as you're working throughout the day. So we can actually invisibly in the background compare that, check that, use machine learning and AI to account for discrepancies in how people behave, because no one behaves exactly the same way the entire time. There's always going to be certain levels of discrepancies. Your focus might be not be 100% at that moment. You may have hurt your hand or something happened to you where you're not having a normal typing behavior or mouse movement behavior, but those things can be accounted for with machine learning AI. So that's part of our solution. But for giving you the ability to confirm someone's identity on an all-day continuous basis, the way you can be checked at any time or all the time, is very important. And what we're doing is focusing in on the ability to alert the firm of discrepancies or anomalies that we see in user identity, pretty much in a real-time basis. So that would allow for the ability to take either remediative action or investigative action based on your existing security policies. So what we do is when we see a sustained pattern of identity risk, we then can alert your existing security tools. So whether it's your SIM or whether you want to notify your SOC or your administrators to say, hey, there's something about this uh, user activity that doesn't look like their normal profile. And we want to be able to take either investigative action, or in some cases, if depending on who the user is, if they're a sysadmin with administrative privileges, you might want to knock them off the network right away or challenge them for additional authentication. And our solution allows for that. So our solution can be used as a kind of a standalone application for identifying those anomalies and actually taking action either on an automated or a manual basis. Or we can be used as a signal, an identity confirmation signal that you can feed into your other solutions, whether it's a UEBA solution, a SIM, a SOAR, to get more telemetry and more accurate data about that individual user and make decisions about, is there enough risk here that corrective action for that session. So this is where traditional solutions fall down today, because after you've logged in initially, that's kind of it. We're trusting and presuming that you're that same person that entire time. And in today's environment where you have remote workers, that's just a huge security risk and something that needs a new approach. And continuous authentication is that new approach, where if you look at things like NIST 800-207, which talks about zero trust, they're actually calling for continuous authentication in NIST 800-207. So we're addressing that head on, and that's we map very well to that. So Pluralock, while we have continuous authentication, we also have MFA ourselves. We have the ability to do MFA differently than other folks do, as that we're a frictionless solution, meaning we don't require hardware for both the MFA piece and for the continuous authentication piece. So there's no need to have fobs, no need to have tokens, no need to even have a mobile device and mobile applications to use our solution, since it's all based on a combination of behavioral biometrics combined with other contextual signals that we can mix in to make a risk decision. So it's not just about how I'm typing my credentials, but it's combined with things like my IP address that I'm coming in on, my location. Could I physically be logging in from where I logged in last time and the amount of time that's passed by? Looking at the browser, does this browser look the same as the browser that I normally come in on, based on the plugins, based on other things about my computer. So we're looking at interrogating that as well to make a determination. Does this look like you, and does this look like you on a continuous basis? And what we're doing is we're looking at both the MFA piece and the continuous piece. If you combine those two technologies together, you're able to have a better, signal that you could eventually use as a passwordless environment, where if you're trusted because you're being authenticated regularly every few seconds, you can take that signal and you can use that signal combined with MFA to have a kind of a truly passwordless experience. So that's the path that we're heading down with our Adapt and our Defend solutions that will allow you to take action, recognize if a rogue user is on the network, and make some decisions about either ending that session or escalating the risk factors by tying into your existing security policies and your existing security monitoring tools. With that said, the traditional total cost of ownership around a security product, you usually don't have much of an ROI associated with security. It's more of a, hey, we need to do this to protect our assets. If you look at traditional MFA, again, you're looking at hard cost if you have to use hard tokens, whether those are USB fobs or security tokens. There's a cost to not only acquiring those hardware devices, but also to managing them on a regular basis, as people tend to either forget them, lose them, or they stop working for whatever reason. So you have to issue new devices, and then you have to manage those devices. And then you get user pushback, right? You get privacy issues that people say, I don't want to install this piece of software or that piece of software on my personal device. So that becomes an issue for people. So more security, more customers, more support load and cost associated with having a hardware-based approach to authentication. And those obviously present different risks depending on the different methodologies you have out there. With Pluralock, with a full-time identity confirmation method that does not require hardware, so there's no new hardware to manage, no device management software to deal with, you can actually tend to lower your security overhead costs, lower your support load, reduce the number of times you have to reset passwords, reduce the complexity of passwords. So as most people know, the 16 or 18-digit character passwords that were first recommended by folks like NIST have now kind of fallen out of favor because people can't remember them. They write them down, they store them in their browser. It becomes less secure having a more complex password. With a solution like ours, it doesn't matter if you have my credentials, because you can't type them in the same way that I type them in. Therefore, you're not going to get in. Even if you have a valid credential, you're going to be blocked from successfully getting into that network or into that login. So you can reduce the complexity, you can reduce the security overhead cost. You can even, a lot of our customers will expand the password expiry rules that they have. Normally they have a 3-month expiry rule. They'll go from 6 month or a 1 year, because there's less risk involved if you have a behavioral biometric approach behind the scenes that's less costly. So those are the things that we see that are challenges today around the traditional MFA and SSO market. We actually do have the ability with our MFA solution to be an identity provider as well. So we can actually deliver some single sign-on capabilities, or we can work in tandem with your existing single sign-on provider. We can also work in tandem with your existing MFA solutions as a step-up method. If you were to fail your behavioral biometric authentication, we can step up to other vendor solutions as well. So if you already invested in those solutions, you have the flexibility to work in tandem with those solutions if you desire to do so. So that's questions, I guess. If you have questions about the approach or about the the concept of continuous authentication, I'm happy to address them.